for technology or anything, you could go and see it for yourself. What I do post it regarding different technologies. And this is my LinkedIn profile. If you want to follow me out, or you want to kind of see what I really do or what kind of experience I have, you could see it in detail. Okay, so the next thing is, so what I do, that's more important. So people would ask. So I am technically a subject matter expert in cloud and enterprise solution architecture best practices. And I design architectures or data architectures and strategies for enterprises for helping them in modernizing their data platform. So as a lot of organizations and big organizations, they are moving to cloud and modern databases. So I help them to design their strategy, to design their modern platforms, define their digital strategies. I do that. And I work with a lot of, I myself was a developer at one point of time, but now I work with a lot of data analysts. I work with a lot of developers and technical architects to actually see how things work. And I work with them to make sure that the product really works for the companies. And I help organizations to plan and design for big data strategy. That's another thing which I do on a daily basis. And to just give you a glimpse, this is the list of the technologies I work on a daily basis. Primarily, I'm a Microsoft technologist. So yes, I use Azure. I use Azure SQL, Databricks, .NET, Synapse Analytics, data factories or data lakes. This is what I do. I do have a kind of a certification in other cloud providers like AWS or GCP, but primarily my bread and butter is in Microsoft. So I'm a Microsoft technologist. So why I'm here today? So we are going to talk about cloud computing. That's one. And we are going to talk about especially the cloud databases. And we are going to talk about what are the offerings of the databases on Microsoft Azure. And of course, we are going to have a hands-on the demonstration, because I don't want to kind of bore you out with all that PowerPoint or PPT stuff. And of course, the questions and queries, I kept it at the first one, because without questions or queries, there's only one thing granted in life, that is questions. Answers are never granted in life. That's what I assume. So questions and queries will do take at the end. And so before we talk about and we delve into the practical stuff, so let's try and understand what is cloud computing. Now, cloud computing is more like where a cloud service provider automatically provisions, scales, and manages the infrastructure for you. So if you see a data center, you would see a lot of servers, you would see a lot of electricity going around, a lot of power is required to run those servers, the network switches, and so much of stuff. But in case of a cloud computing, you don't need that data center. You are running everything on the cloud. So somebody is managing that stuff for you. So it manages all the things. It scales up. It manages the servers. It manages the networking, the switches, the routers. Everything is managed by them. So you would have different options to manage, but primarily somebody is doing stuff for you. So another important thing within the cloud computing is scalability. Now, scalability is purely on demand and as per the needs. If you remember, let's say, I know that Amazon does a lot of a sales event, even Flipkart does on Diwali or anything. So just imagine when you hit the Amazon servers, when the sales are on, you normally hit some kind of a problem or issues or something because of the load problems. Now, cloud computing is something where you could just scale up the load automatically. And then once you don't need that load, you could scale it up, scale it down automatically. So it means you just pay for what you have used. For 2 days, you needed more servers. They were added to the capacity. And then the 2 days you don't need, the next of the days you don't need those servers. These servers are automatically taken out. So that's the flexibility you get out of a cloud computing. Now, business houses, because it's a cloud, somebody is managing it. So business houses, they don't need to buy the servers, they buy the software, or they spend on the capital expenditure cost. We normally call it as a CapEx cost. So let's say if you are going to run a business, you need some servers, you need IT setup, you need everything. And when I was in LPU, I set up the whole data center slowly over a period of like 7-8 years. We spent so much amount of money, the servers, the switches, everything. But in the cloud, you could just like, when I'll show you the practical stuff, you don't need even a server to host your database. You could just set it up and then just you start using it. Like you don't need a server or anything. Everything is provisioned for you automatically. And sometimes when you say serverless, the servers are gone. People think about that. No, the servers are still there. They are just abstracted from developers and business. Somebody is running servers for you, but you don't need those physical servers. You don't see those physical servers. You just need them. You just use them. They are provisioned automatically at the back end, and we'll see how they are provisioned. So that's the beauty of the cloud computing. And you pay for what you use only. So you don't have to do the initial capital expenditure cost. You use and then you pay for what you use. So you don't have to worry about that. I have to pay monthly a fee or anything. Of course, there is some kind of a fee for different services, but there are certain services like serverless where you don't have to pay. You just pay for what you use. So that's the beauty of a cloud computing. So just continuing with the cloud computing, normally there are three platforms which we divide in cloud. One is the IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service model. The second is PaaS, which is a platform as a service model. And the third is a SaaS, which is software as a service model. Now, if you see, all the stuff which is in kind of a red color for you, like if you see in this case, these red color, you see this is in red color, but in this, you don't have any red color. And what is the purpose of this is, so whatever is there is in the red color. So it means this thing is managed by the cloud provider. They manage the networking, they manage the storage, they manage the servers, they manage the virtualization, they virtually manage everything. And if you see this green colored part, it means in the infrastructure as a service, we manage this whole part. If you are going for an infrastructure as a service, right? So what is an infrastructure as a service kind of examples? So let's say the best example is the virtual machines. So you manage the OS, you could install OS, you could manage that, you manage the middleware, you manage the runtimes, you manage your data on that, you even manage your applications. But as we move on to the right-hand side, the PaaS services like PaaS, platform as a service. So you just manage the application and the data. Rest, everything is managed by the service provider. So it is all abstracted. Just imagine you need to host an app service, you need to host a website. You just need to manage your application and data. That's all. Everything rest is managed by the platform, by the cloud provider. So easy. And even if you go on to a software as a service, technically you are not managing anything, right? Everything is managed. It's the other way around. I'm sorry, I put it the other way around. This is managed by the what you call as the cloud provider, not the actual what you call customer. So the example in the SaaS is like Microsoft 365, Google Gmail Drive, or anything. You use these softwares irrespective of the fact. You could use it on a phone, you could use it on a, let's say a computer, on a laptop, or anything. You don't need any server, nothing, just a browser. Everything is done for you, right? So that's how typically the cloud computing platform is divided. Majority of people invest out in infrastructure as a service or platform as a service because that's one thing which you could easily use. SaaS is something which is very much used as a abstract, like you just use a Gmail or a Microsoft Office 365, which is kind of a subscription. It automatically gets the update and everything. Let me see one question. Okay, thank you, Abhiraj. Okay, so let's move on to the next one and see. Let's take one very simple example of what does the cloud computing make sense. So let's assume there is a fictitious company or a fictitious corporation, a startup, let's assume. So people just go for startup. Now there is a startup culture in India also. Startups are where they don't have much of a money. The seed funding is less. They are kind of going with some idea. They are getting some funding, but not in huge priorities. So they could have the following use cases. So they could go in for a traditional data center, like they could invest, they do the initial investment on the servers, software, maintenance costs they have to do, they have to hire the skilled personals, they have to do the depreciation, they have to deal with the scalability issues. If the load gets high, they need to add more servers. But let's say if they go for serverless or to the cloud, so they are not going to have any initial investment, no servers, no software, nothing. They are not going to maintain the servers. Let's say if you're going for a PaaS service, you're not going to maintain any servers. There is no depreciation. So because you have not bought any assets, so there is no depreciation. Scalability on demand, yes, because you could improve the scale, you could get onto a higher scale, more servers, you can add on the runtime, and you could reduce the servers on the runtime as per your needs. And then finally, pay for what you use. So I think so, based upon our use case, that is the fictitious corporation, the startup or less of a seed funding, this one would be the most convenient option to go in for, because they don't want to invest too much on this one. So that's why the serverless compute or the cloud computing for especially a startup would make more sense, because they could easily use these services. They could go with that. They don't have to invest initial investment or money or anything, and don't worry about even the skilled labor. You could easily manage those things. So that's why serverless compute or serverless computing is becoming more popular. People are flocking onto that. And there are so many use cases available. We have just taken one startup, but for government organizations, for big organizations, even for small to mid-scale organizations, this is going to be very much easy for them. Okay. So let's go on to the next one. Now, when we talk about Azure database offerings, so we are going to talk about three. There are more database offerings, but these are the major ones. So the first one is the Azure SQL. This is more or less the serverless version of MS SQL Server, right? So you might have installed MS SQL Server on your machine. You need a machine, then you install it, and then you use it. But in this session, we'll actually create a Azure database. You don't need any server. You don't need anything. You'll create it in 5 minutes. Then you have a server running up. Boom. You could just use it, access it from anywhere. The backups are automatically taken. You could set it up at the fly. Everything is done in few minutes. Now, when you talk about Azure SQL Pass, so it comes in different tiers. You could have a general purpose database. You could have a hyperscale. You could have a mission critical. The backups are automatically done for you. Highly scalable. You could scale up. You need more power. You need more RAM. You could add it for some time, and you want to reduce it after some time, you could reduce it. So that's one, I would say, the offering from Microsoft Azure. The second offering, which we'll talk about, is the database for Postgres. Now, Postgres is an open source database, and it does automatically scaling. It's an open source, and you have different versions to offer. In this case, Azure SQL Pass, by default, you are automatically provisioning the latest one. As you might be knowing that SQL Server 2022 is already there, so you could use that. And then in case you don't have to choose the version, you are automatically tuned and you are automatically shifted to the latest version. That's the beauty of it. But let's say you installed it in your, let's say, data center, you install one version, and if the next version comes, you have to choose pay for the next version and go on. Like all those issues are there. But in this case, it's all good. And finally, there's another Azure database for MySQL, which is a serverless version of MySQL. Now, MySQL was an open source database, but eventually it got bought by Oracle. So you could use a community edition of MySQL, which is an open source database still, and it is compatible with different versions. So you could use any of them without any server, without any resources, without any physical hardware, and we'll see how to provision it and how to use it on the fly. That's the beauty of that. Okay. Before I move on, I just want to make sure if you have any questions, any clarifications or anything, then we can move ahead. Any questions or any clarifications? Any questions? No? Okay. Let's go on and see if we have questions. We can come back again. Okay. Now, let's see. So I promised you I'm not going to bore you out with so many PPT slides or anything, but let's try create this first one and see how we could use Azure SQL Pass as a database offering, and we can set it up in a few minutes, and then we can start working on that. Okay. So let's see if there is, okay, how we can create our own cloud. Okay, so Abhiraj, let me answer Abhiraj's question first. You can create your own cloud. That's called as a private cloud, but it would come at a huge cost. So nobody tries to create your own clouds, rather you use the public servicings, but you could definitely have that option. So, but it is not recommended because it comes at a huge cost. Because if you're creating your own cloud, let's say, you are still doing the similar thing like setting up your own infrastructure, your own data centers and everything. So that's why. Okay, Mohammed, which cloud certification is good, Google or Amazon? Mohammed, I'll try to answer that question based upon another question. Which car is good, a BMW or a Mercedes, right? So I hope you get my point. Both are good. Google is also good. Amazon is also good. The whole idea is when you go into the market, you need to prove your skills. So if you are skillful, you go with Google or with Amazon or with Microsoft Azure, doesn't really matter. For every cloud provider, they have their certifications. You have the skills, prove it out, you get the job. Nobody cares which one you do. Because and fundamentally, I normally give one example to every student is, don't try to learn, when you learn how to drive a car. You never learn how to drive a Maruti or let's say a Hyundai, right? So remember my example. So when you learn a cloud, you learn a cloud concepts. You never learn Azure or AWS or anything. I've worked with Azure. I've worked with GCP. Why? Because I've fundamentally learned cloud. You could easily switch on to different. The fundamental concepts are same. So always stay on that. Okay. So you could go for any certification, whatever you feel comfortable. Every certification has a validity, and every certification has a, I would say, scope in terms of job in the market. Okay, so let's now go and see it for yourself. So I'll just open up the portal, and so if you want to go on to, let's say, Azure, this is the portal you can follow, portal.azure.com. You need an account to be created. So I've just used my Hotmail account to create that account, and you could get started. Now, once you create an account, in order to try out anything on the cloud, what you need is a subscription. Now, I have created one subscription, which is already there, RD Azure subscription. I've created it. But when you start it off, let's say on the Azure, you could create this Microsoft, even Google, even Amazon. They give you around $200 of credits, free credits, which you could use to learn those cloud skills. And I think so in India, because the INR works over there, the Indian rupees work. I think so it's around 25,000 rupees or 30,000 rupees, which is valid for around 1 year to try out certain concepts. Of course, when you create that subscription, you would need a credit card to set that up. But of course, that credit card will not be charged till you have that services. The free trial is there. So the free trial is normally from 6 months to 1 year, and the number of the amount that has been allocated to me. So when I created this account, this allowed me $200 credit. So I could create any service within $200. I could utilize that. It is okay. But once that period is expired and you have consumed your $200, because I'm in Canada, so what you need to do is you just need to use the same subscription. You could use that, and they would only, and subscription type I have used is pay as you go. Now, pay as you go means if I'll create something, I'll be only charged for that. I don't have any service. I don't have anything. So I won't be charged, right? My credit card details are there, but they are not charging me anything. Okay. So that's how it is there. Now, fundamentally, what we are going to go back to our C is we are going to create this Azure SQL PaaS service. That's the first offering which we'll try to learn. And let's see how we can do that. Now, in order to go with that, so you just create a resource over here, or you could just search, let's say, Azure SQL PaaS service. Okay, so you have multiple like services. You could search it around. You could do the same thing over here. It's fundamentally the same, right? Now, if I search here, and if I click on here, it says you don't have any Azure SQL resources to display. Okay, that's fine, because I don't have any resource. I don't want to, my credit card should be charged because I'm not using any resource for any purpose. Let me see if I'm, okay, so Mohammed, you have another question. I've done CCNA and CCNP and working as a network support. Now I want to upgrade. So I need to continue with the Cisco certificate or go with the cloud for future scope. I think so. You could go for the cloud scope, and you could go into specializations like security specialization, which multiple cloud provider provides. And you could also specialize into infrastructure, right? Where you set up your networks, VPNs, and through the cloud, how you could do. So that would be a more appropriate line for you, Mohammed. Okay. So let's try setting it up. So we'll just say create Azure SQL resource. Okay. So we'll create that. And now it gives me three options. So it says you could create an Azure SQL database. Okay. You could create a managed instance, and you could have a virtual machine. Now, if you see this virtual machine is the PaaS service, the IaaS service, infrastructure as a service. So where we would install the OS, we have the middleware, runtime data, and everything. But what they are going to provide us is virtualization, server, storage, and networking, right? So that's what it is there. So we are not going to do this. We are just going to do a SQL database. These two are the PaaS services, like platform as a service model. So we'll set it up. It is serverless. Something would be done for us, and we can start using it, right? So I'll you could create a single database. You could create an elastic pool. Single database means you just need one database, just like you create a database in a SQL server. Elastic pool means your database is going to share resources from different pools. So it is going to be a little bit cheaper because you are not getting some dedicated resources, and you could create your own database server where you could host multiple databases. So let's keep it for the demonstration. We are just going for a single database, and we'll just create it, right? So once you create, before you create any resource, it is going to ask you a couple of things in every resource. So it asks for basics, then you go into networking, security, additional settings, and so on. Now, the first thing, let's go with the basics one. So it has a subscription, right? It automatically selects a subscription. You need to have one subscription which is active. Otherwise, you cannot create any resource. So that's one important thing you need to remember. And then it says, you select a resource group. So I've created one resource group called as RKV resource group. Now take this resource group as a folder. where you can put multiple files into one single folder, just like a folder. So whatever resources I'm going to create, I'm going to put this into this group so that it's easy for me to manage. It's a folder with multiple files I could manage rather than putting all those files in different places at the desktop. You put them into a folder. Okay. Now, the next thing is the first time, okay, because you're creating a single database. So it says a database name. So let's say I'll just give RKV and I'll say lovely, right? Okay. And it checks that the database doesn't contain any name, special patrons. It is not reserved keyword, and no database name with the same name exists. Like if somebody has already created it, we cannot use it. And then it says, okay, you need to create a server to host this database. Okay. So I don't have a server. So what it says is, you must create a new server. So I'll go on to create a new server. Okay. So it says give a server name. So I'll say RKV and I'll say server, right? So if you see, it creates a server, RKV server, and it would assign this .database.windows.net. This is what Microsoft Azure does. This is your convention because we are going to use this to actually connect onto this server. And you need to specify the location, like which region you might be. I'm in the, let's say, not in the East US, but I'm specifying East US. That's okay for me. And then for this server, which authentication you need. So you could have an Azure Active Directory. You could use both SQL and Azure authentication, but I'm just going to use a SQL authentication. Means I would create one login. So I'll say RKV admin, let's say, and then I'm going to say password. So let's say I'll keep that password something like this. And this is my password, they match. Okay, so that looks fine. So I just simply say, so this is the server name. The location of this server is in that region where Microsoft would create, Azure would create in their data center. And authentication method is SQL. I'm creating it RKV admin, RKV server, and my password. I click OK. That's fine. So my server is created. So if you see the server, which was not there, I create new. It is already populated for me, which looks fine. So then it says, do you want to use an elastic pool? I say, no, I don't want to use. Or if I just want to use that elastic pool, yes. And because if I say yes, I would have to create an elastic pool. So I don't want that right now. So I just simply say no. And then it asks me, what is your workload environment? Means whether it is a kind of a development environment for you or it's a production environment for you. I simply say it's a development environment for me because we are just doing it for demonstration. Now, it is saying it is configuring some stuff for me based upon my development or production. So if I choose production, these things change. If I choose development, this thing changes. So let's say on the development, I can configure my database, right? So if I choose configure my database, it's a serverless. Do you want to create a general purpose or basic or standard? This is a DTU. Now, vCore means you have virtual cores, just like your computer has cores. So it is asking, okay, do you want Azure to create a server for you, which is on a vCore model? Or you want to create on a DTU. DTU is a database transaction units. It means, okay, how much memory or specific CPU would be allocated for running queries. So this would be more cheaper as compared to vCore. So let's say I just go for a basic one, which is in a DTU, a basic one. And then it says, okay, in the basic, data's max size is 2 GB. And how much would be the estimated cost per month for this is around $5, right? It would cost me $5 if I run it for 1 month. So I'm paying only $5 for a month to use this server, right? And it's just a basic server. So you could have other comparison tiers, but that's what I do. I say apply. Okay, so this I have done. This is also good. And then it says backup storage redundancy. So you want that redundancy means if something happens to your server, do you want to copy your backups to another zone, means another data center, which which is automatically done. We don't have to do that, but I'm just keeping it locally redundant, because if you say geo redundant, it would create a backup in some another region. So let's say I'm in US, it might create an European region, so that if this data center in the US region goes hayway, it could use it over there, right? So I'm just keeping that locally redundant because I don't want to invest more cost. Okay, so that's what I'm setting it up. One, subscription, I choose my resource group. Database name, I created a server, gave a username and a password. Development environment, I gave my size, what I need. You want more sizes, you have options, but that would be costly. It is letting me know that it would cost me this. Next is the networking. Okay, so you go to the networking. Okay, now it says connectivity method. You say no access, public endpoint, or a private endpoint. So I'm just choosing a public endpoint. Public endpoint means I can connect to my server. Even if you choose no access, you could change it afterwards. It doesn't mean you cannot change these settings, but I want a public endpoint. And firewall rules allow Azure services, means if you have another services, you could access this server, no or yes. I say yes, you could access this, and add the current client IP address, means my IP address from where I'm connected. Please add that. So in the firewall, it would be automatically opened up so that I could connect to this server. Okay, makes sense. And I'm just keeping the connection policy simple. And this is the by default encrypted connections. It uses a TLS, that is the SSL 1.2, which looks fine. So just simple one. Let's go on to the next, security. Okay, so it says it gives you more options. Okay, you want to protect your data. So they say we can enable a Microsoft Defender for you. Start a free trial. No, I say I don't need that. You need a ledger facility out there. It would have another kind of a auditing feature on your SQL server. I say, no, I don't want to configure that. You want some system assigned identities or anything? No, I don't need that. And you want TD, transparent data encryption. You could configure that, but this is only for a demonstration purpose. We are not doing it for a big organization, or we're not doing it as a production load. So I just keep it, go on to the next additional settings. Okay, so it says you want to use existing data. Let's say you already have a SQL server, you have a backup, you could use a backup, but I don't have it. These are the collation settings. And the maintenance window. Maintenance window means because when you click OK over here, Azure is going to create a virtual server for you. So you don't have access to that server. You don't have a username, anything. You have a username, password only to the SQL server, not to the virtual machine which it would create. That's why it is called as serverless. So it says, if I want to maintain or install updates, when should I install it? So this is the by default option you have. And then you say next tags. Tags is just like if you have so many resources, you say, I want to tag it as it's an Azure SQL machine, or let's say name and Azure SQL. Okay, that's a tag I want to create, nothing else. And then finally review and create. So it gives me like, okay, this is what you selected. This is what the estimated cost is. These are the subscription, resource group, everything what I selected, networking, security, everything looks fine. And if it looks fine, I can just click up create, which we are going to create it, but you could also download a template for automation. So let's say if somebody wants to create with the same thing, you could click over here. It would give you a JSON file, which you could just use with PowerShell to deploy directly. It would exactly deploy the same configuration to another server, right? So, but we are not going to do that. That's beyond the scope of this. So we'll just use a create. Okay, so it starts creating. Let's say it's going to take some time. So it has initialized the deployment. Now, what exactly it is doing is it's exactly setting up a virtual machine at the back end, which you don't have any access. It is creating all those resources, everything. You don't need any servers. You don't need any machinery, nothing, but you would be able to access your SQL server. So, okay, let's take the questions. Okay, the best resource for 1,000 seconds. Prakash, I didn't get this question for 1,000 requests or second or anything. What exactly that mean? How to set up the replication? I cannot show you the replication, but you could, once the resource is done, I'll show you the window where the other settings like replication and backups and anything you could do. And how do you compare the performance of MySQL, MS SQL, and Postgres? If you talk about me, I'm a little biased towards Microsoft SQL Server because I'm a Microsoft guy, but I don't have any issues with the Postgres. Postgres is a wonderful open source database. It comes in different flavors. We are going to do a Postgres demo also, so just wait for that. But otherwise, the SQL Server has come a long way. They started off in 2002 and they have improved. Like 2022 MS SQL Server is way, it is in the leaders quality or the leaders in the Gartner's quadrant, what we call it. So fundamentally, I would say these things, performance wise, they are almost equivalent. It is more like a choosing factor, which one you want to use, which company wants to invest in which technology. That's more like a choosing effort. But otherwise, they all are good technologies and they work best in the possible way. Okay, so can you share with us a PDF on these steps? I'll share the video for that. I have a video, so don't worry. I'll share it with you. Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's go back and see it. Your deployment is complete. Okay, everything looks fine. Deployment is done. So it just gives me go to resource. So now when I go to resource, so if you see RK Lovely was the SQL database name. That's what we created, SQL database, right? This was the server which we have, right? And if I go on to the overview, so it gives me a complete dashboard where I can see how is the compute going on. Right now, there's no one using it because we just created it, right? How the database data storage is going, maximum storage size, use size, everything is going around. It is in which subscription, which location, you could restore that. You could have firewall rules over there, right? You could have this compute and storage. Let's say you want to use this server programmatically and you want to connect it with, let's say, with JDBC, you could use this connection string. If you want to connect with ODBC, you could use this connection string. With PHP, you could use it in this way. They have given you the code, ready-made code. If you have a Go language, you could use that way. If you have a ADO.NET, you could use this. You just need to copy this. That's all. And you could use it in your actual program, right? And then it has some another properties like who is the location, admin login, whether which subscription, resource ID, and these are the other things, data discovery, transparent data encryption, which we didn't go. You can set for your alerts, metrics. For example, these are the alerts. If you have, you can create a rule. Now, alerts are something, let's say your resource utilization goes over 70%, right? So it should create, you can create alert. If the resource goes beyond 70%, it sends an email or whatever you want to do, that you can easily do, right? So these are all the options where you could get everything. There's a query editor they have created over here. You could just use the same password to get it started. Let's say if I give my password over here, and if I get started, let's say, okay, so this is a query editor over here. So you see, these are the tables. So there are no tables over here. These are the views, no views, like by default views are there, stored procedures, no, nothing is there, right? So we don't need it right now because we'll be using something else to connect that. Now, once it is done, let's go on to the overview. So I say, okay, I don't want to save anything over here. Now, if I just want to use this server, so if you see this server name in the overview, this is, you can just copy to the clipboard, right? So I copy to that clipboard. Okay, that is the server name through which I can connect. Now, firstly, because it's a SQL server, you could just use this SQL Server Management Studio. So let's open it out and try see whether that utilization starts moving, because once you start using it, you might create some table or something Database you have already created, RKV, lovely. Okay, now what you're going to do over here is, so you just type in your name, you paste your server name, the SQL Server authentication, and what was the name of the user? RKV admin. That's the user we created, and the password we need for that. And I'll just simply say connect. So once you do that, so you are actually connected. See, simple. You're connected on to the server. This is your database. That's the database we created. That looks fine. Tables. Right now, there are no tables, and we just selected the very basic one. So that's why it would be a little bit slow, because we just selected for the developmental purposes, right? So what I can do here is I just simply say, let's say you want to create a table. Okay. So you click on that table, and it is actually connecting on to our SQL Server in the cloud. So let's say I want to use a column called as ID, which is integer, let's say, and okay, so just keep it as integer, and let's say employee name. So I just want to be n variable character. Okay, save that. Let's save it. You want to save that. Table name is, let's say we want to create it as employee. Okay, you create that. So a table is created. Boom, it's done. You just refresh that. So you get that table. Okay, so you could do a new query, or you could just do a new query. And let's say you want to do a query and then start using that. So let's start from, let's say, employee. Okay, so now it's a very simple thing. The same way, execute it. Nothing is there because it's an empty record. You want to insert the records into that, insert into EMP. I'll say ID, ename, and then I'll say values. You want to have, let's say, 1, and you want to give, let's say, my name, Rohit. You insert it, execute it. Okay, rows are affected. So you select it, execute it, it's done, right? So it's as simple as that. 5 minutes, you click on certain things, your SQL Server is ready. Just imagine, I remember the times when I had to call my system administrator and ask him to set up a SQL Server. That person would take 2 days to set up a virtual machine, then install SQL Server, then ask me which version you need and all that stuff, and then give me the access. Here, I just created it in 5 minutes, just simple, click, 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 boom, and it gives you all the options. Now, because we have done, let's say, inserted this, so if you go back into so you would start seeing this spike, right? See this? So this is like how your compute utilization is going around. So you are charged for this only. You're not charged for whatever you are doing. Of course, you are charged for the storage, but majority your DTUs you are being charged. So whatever you are running, queries or anything, I'm just using it for an hour because this is just a moment we have set it around. Okay, so that much easy it is to kind of set it around. And this is like set server firewall, like where you set the security settings. So if you are into this, so public network access. So if you want to disable that, if you disable it, I won't be able to connect from my machine to this server. You could use private endpoints where one Azure service can talk to another Azure service in a very, very private way. That's the beauty of this. So public cannot access that server. Nobody can access that. Only a service within the Azure can access SQL Server that are called as private endpoints. That's beyond the scope of this, but that's how you could set up your private endpoints, your connectivity, how you want to do that. So this is all like so much easy, and everything is done in the same way, right? You get the complete, but you don't have any physical server. The database is there, you're done. Now, this is a SQL Server Management Studio, which we normally use. But if you want to use, let's say, this Azure Data Studio, so you could use this one also. Now, in the Azure Data Studio, so you could just use a new one. So let's say I'll just create a new Microsoft SQL Server. This is my server name, and I want to use the SQL login. So RKV admin, and then I give my password And then if I just click on here, it would give me the RKV lovely database. It would fetch it. Yeah, it automatically fetches it, connect. So if you connect it here, so you are connected onto this server. This is the one which I'm running it on my local machine, my Surface Book, but this is the one which is Azure SQL database. So you have tables, there's one table, you want to create, let's say, new query. So you say select star from employee, right? And we created one record, it would give me that result. So just a little bit of a delay because it is hosted somewhere and we are not using the full power throttle of that. So that's why. So it's so easy, like virtually anybody can go and create it, like no rocket science. It's not something I've been doing it for 20 years. So only I can create it. If you know the basics, fundamentals, anybody can go and set up an account and can create it. Okay, let's see the question answers. How many requests or months does this service provides? I'm not sure about this question, what you're asking, but you can have any request, no problems. You are just charged for what you are using. So there is no limit on the request or on the per month. You're not bounded by any limitation on that. And please, can we get later record of this lecture, sir? Yes, of course, I think so. It is being recorded. Manish is recording it out. You'll definitely get this one, of course. Okay, so this is the one which we create. Let's go back to our portal. And if I see in my home, so now I have one RKV lovely database, which is a SQL database, last view 2 minutes. It is in this resource group. If I click on this resource group, so you could see there is one server which we created in the East US, and there is also a database which we created and which is working fine. Now, there is one more thing. Let's say you go back to this server, let's say, so you have a server over here, right? You want to delete it. You want to create a new database. Let's say you want a new database. You could do all that. You have backups, deleted database, failover recoveries, everything. Like you could do fundamentally anything which you could do it from a server, right? And if I go back to the this database again, so this is a copy. You could restore your database, export that. You could connect with Data Studio or Visual Studios. They give you all that stuff. They keep on changing that. Even because you are having your Power BI, which is a power platform for creating dashboards or reporting, you could use Power BI and Power Apps or Power Automate to connect onto this, to actually work with this and create reports on that. So you just see this is another spike, right? Because we ran that query in the Azure Data Studio, and then it again kind of gets down. Okay, so let's try and go back to our slide, and let's go with another one, which is Azure Database for Postgres, right? So we'll try to create this one. And remember, in the Azure SQL database, when we created it, it never asked for the version. It never asked you want SQL Server 2019, 2022, because by default, Microsoft's Azure SQL automatically runs on the latest edition. So you don't have to worry about, you are running on the latest version. So if I'm actually connecting onto this one, this is actually running on 2022. They automatically put you on the latest version. So you don't have to worry about everything they manage. You don't have to worry about the licensing, right? Okay, let's go back to the Azure portal and we'll search for Azure, database for Postgres. Okay, so now let's go in for Azure database for a Postgres server. Okay, now if you see, it's a Postgres server. It's empty, nothing is there. So we can create an Azure database for the Postgres server, and it would be on the similar philosophy, how we create it. So when I create that, okay. Now this is the one which is Azure database for Postgres. That is one, which is the first one. And then there is a Cosmos DB for Postgres also. Now, this one is very, very highly available service where replication is done automatically. You have a very demanding applications where the servers are run in clusters, just like MongoDB or NoSQL. You could use that. So we're not going to create this one. We just want to use a flexible server. You could create a single server, or you could create a flexible server. Now in the single server, it's letting you know private link support is there, cross-region read replicas you can create. In this case, you have latest major and minor releases, zone resilient is also available, custom one or maintenance window, best cost optimization. So that's your choice which one we want to create. So let's create a single server. So we'll just choose a single one. Let's create that. Okay. Now, if you see, it's almost the same thing. So subscription, the same one, it is automatically selected. Resource group, I'm just going to create within the RKV resource group. Okay, so now let's keep the server name. So I'll say RKV Postgres server, right? So we'll keep it like this. Okay, so data source is none. We don't have any backups or anything, right? So we're just keeping it the same way. Location is East US, right? We're just keeping it that. Version, you want to keep it 11, you want to keep it 10, like which options you have. So I'll just keep it 11. And then compute and storage. Okay, so it is 4 cores with 100 GB. We don't need that one. It's a too big a one. So I could use a basic one. I could use a journal purpose. I could use memory optimized. They have different one, but then the estimated monthly cost would also increase. The journal purpose is something like this, which is like $267, and the basic one is like $54, right? So you have 2 cores. You have a storage, and you could set the auto storage to true, means the storage is gonna increase it based upon as you use. Retention period for the backup is like this. You want to keep it for 7 days or more. You could go that, and locally redundant. Okay, I'll just click on OK. That's fine. And then you give the server name. So RKV, let's say admin. Okay. Username must contain only characters. Okay, it is not allowing me that. So we'll just keep RKV admin, and then password, I'm just gonna keep that. Change. Okay, and then I have to confirm it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, looks fine. So this is done. So RKV Postgres server, East US version is this. This is the basic server stuff, RKV admin, that. And then I'll go on to the additional settings. You want encryption of the data. If you want, you could do that. You have to pay, and the database performance is also like a little bit affected on that, right? And then you say next tags if you want to create to kind of search it. But otherwise, you just review it. This would cost me $54. View pricing details. These are all the details for that tags I've created. And then you can just click on you have the same template for automation, or you just click on the create. So once it goes on to the create, so it means it is again, the Azure is creating a new server at the backend. A virtual machine is being created for you. It has started that automation process for you, and you will just be able to use the Postgres server in the same way, right? Okay, by the time it actually deploys that, let's see the question answer session. Okay. Support, we have 10,000 users in the application. Which database resource I choose to manage the request? It depends upon Prakash. You could use a SQL server also. 10,000 users is not a big users. When we talk about big users, I'm talking about 10 lakh users, a million users. 10,000 users is a simple users. Like in LPU, we had almost 35,000 users on campus, right? So it works. And there won't be any backward compatibility issues if I don't access my server for 10 years or the server is updating regularly. When Azure is updating this stuff, you will get the notifications that you need to upgrade your server. Otherwise, this would be retired. So Azure is going to send you all the notifications. You cannot keep your server for 10 years, just like the same way, because they keep on sending out the things in the abstract way. They just, I would say, move on to the new things, and they would force you to move on to the new things. You cannot keep the same thing, right? Because there are few things they have to manage. So you would need to go that way, right? So the server is still being deployed. It is still being deployed. You could see that deployment is in process. Sometimes it takes around like a couple of minutes, sometimes 5 to 10 minutes, depending upon what kind of a load or service you are trying to configure. If you are trying to configure, let's say, I would say microservices or AKS cluster, it takes more time. Okay. Duration of the class. Okay, so I think so we'll take another half an hour more because it was for 1.5 hours. So Prashant will be taking half an hour more almost. So we'll just go through the Postgres and then we'll have more question answer sessions, like how exactly we could use. Okay. Okay. So deployment is still in process. You have any more questions? You please feel free to ask any queries or any doubts you have. You could ask it. So you could see also over here the notifications where the server is being deployed. This is the one which we deployed it for SQL Server. It was perfectly deployed. Deployment succeeded. This one is currently being deployed in that particular region and in that particular question, right? So, okay, so that's what it is being done. And that's why we call it as a serverless architecture, because we don't know what is happening at the back end. It is abstracted. You just get the resource, you start using it without any worrying about the underlying architecture or underlying hardware or anything. And if you want to, this is the AWS certifications, like you just go on to this site and you could, okay, training and certifications. So if you go, these are all, so you could choose your, what you call your role, if you want to be a solutions architect or a practitioner, a developer or an operations. So let's say if you want to be a solutions architect, this is for that, or a data analytics, you want this one. Training, you could have some classes. They have given you certain best practices, some material to prepare for. So that's how it goes, right? And the similar is Microsoft certifications. They have the same. They have their old certifications also. And then they have their own like cloud certifications. If you want to be a data analyst, you could have these certifications. What they exactly, you could filter those out. You can get those certifications. Yeah. That's my, like, I'm not signed in over here. Otherwise I could have shown you. Okay, let me sign in. So I can use this account. Okay, sign in. And if it allows me, I could just go on to certifications renewal, and I could see that. Check my eligibility in profile. So it would give me, this is my certification. So I have a Azure Data Engineer certification. I have a Solutions Architect certification. It lets you know which certifications you have. You could see your certification details. You could print your certifications, like it's all there, right? Okay, so here the deployment is done. So let's go on to the deployment, the actual resource. So this is the same RKB Postgres SQL Server, the same way, the percentage CPU, storage, you have read replicas not configured, you can configure it. You could have other things like whatever they are giving it to you. And you have this over here, like a server name. So you could copy that. That's very important. And because you could connect, so let's say I can connect this, a server, I'll disconnect it. Let's say create another server. So it's not a SQL server, rather it's a Postgres server. So this is my server name and authentication type is password. Okay, which makes sense. And then username is RKB admin. And then password is that I gave. And then I'll just simply say connect. Now, if you connect on, okay, so the username is not right. Why? We gave, I think so. Let me check if I missed on the, oops. Okay, the username should be in username @hostname. Okay, that's fine. Makes sense because it's a typical @. So we'll just use copy it, paste it over here, and then we'll use it like this. SSL connection is please specify SSL options. Okay, where are the SSL options? Advanced. So SSL allow. Okay, connect. Okay, let's try this is in the preview mode. So I'll just use a Postgres PG admin, right? To connect onto that. That's the actual tool because here I'm just using an extension in the SQL admin. So let's try this tool, which is the actual tool, and see whether it works for us or not. Okay, so this is the like the password which it needs, and then I'll just create let's say register a server. Okay, so I'll say Azure Postgres, right? And this is the connection. I'll give it that way. Username is RKV admin and the password is okay. And I'll just save that. Let's try database. Okay, so I think so we just need to configure that. Probably we missed it. So let's go on to the database and then we'll go on to the connections security. Yeah, so allow access to the Azure services. Yes, you need to allow and add the current IP. We didn't add that, so I'm just adding it. That's fine. And then I'll just need to save it because I was not allowing that firewall. So that's why we were not able to connect. So now let's just save that. And it would update the connection settings and the firewall settings for this server. That is the PG server. And then we'll just try it one more time. So this is how you could allow, you could disallow, you could create like only private IPs or anything. And then if I just simply say admin, okay, save that. Port failed invalid usernames. Oh, I didn't change the username. I'm sorry. No, the username is changed. RKV admin @ Postgres. Okay, let's just try it that way. And then this one save. Okay, yeah, there you go. So you're connected. RKV password for the user Postgres to connect to RKV Postgres. So, okay, let's try. Oops. Why it is not connecting? Okay, so I'm giving the right password. Please enter the password for the user Postgres. No, we are not entering it for Postgres. Okay. Oh, this is a wrong one. I'm sorry. This is a wrong one because this is the Azure server which we created. This is an old one. So I'll just remove that. Okay. And this is the Azure Postgres because we created on this. So you get that, you get the Postgres database, you get the, let's say, publication schemas. So you get the schema, you have a public schema. You could create new databases also, but in here, let's say you could create your own schemas also. But in the tables, you could create a new table. Let's say, so your table name is, let's say, employee. Okay, you want a column, let's say an ID, and you have, let's say, serial. I would just want to keep it as a serial. Okay, and then add another column, which is, let's say, employee name. Which is, let's say, character, which is something character varying, and I'll just save that. So that's the table I've created. Okay. Now, once you create the table, you could just use it for, let's say, you could edit data or you could do anything, whatever the way you want to do that. So that's your, this one, you could create a new row out here. Oops. Why does it not allow me? Okay, let's try and we'll just simply say, let me just do that. Properties, remove it. Okay, so I'll just close this one and then I'll just use view or edit data. Let's say all rows. Let's see your query history and messages. Why it is not allowing me to create a new row? Okay, query, execute and refresh, which is fine, but I cannot. Okay, let me create a new query. Create query tool. Okay, so let's say select star from employee. You run that, so no records, that would be fine. And then I'll say insert into EMP, and I'll say ename. I'll say values, which is, let's say my name, Rohit, and then just do that, run it, simple one, inserted query. If I run this again, you get one record. Okay, now let's go back and check it out in your server. So within the overview, so you start seeing, see, this is how the spike has started off, because we have just started it off and started using it. So it would start telling you how many percentage you have used it or not. So that's how the things would start working. Now, this is the simplistic way by which you could just start off with your startup. You want to try it as a developer. You are working for, let's say, kind of your midterm project or a final project. You don't need server, you don't have a server, you want to try out a concept, you want to try out some application, whatever the reason may be, the use cases. This is so much easy for you guys to just do it, spend less of a money, because even when you create a new account over here, the fundamentals would be very easy for you, and then you don't have to pay, because you'll get some credits free of cost. So here I'm being charged, like whatever I'm using, I'm being charged. But for your case, when it is free trial, it is all free for you. So that's the beauty of your cloud computing. That's why people are moving on to other things. And then there are so many other services which you could just join and then do all that stuff. You could have analytics, you could have reporting, dashboard, you could have fraud detection, and so on, right? Let's go back to the question answers. Okay. As this cloud services, can be sure about the security on public cloud, specifically like banking? Yes, that's a very good question, Vijay. You can definitely be sure, because all your data, especially the data in the cloud, it is encrypted by default. You could encrypt it with your own keys. You could encrypt it with the keys which are managed by Azure, and the data within the transit and at rest, both are encrypted. So banks and public organizations, or your sensitive data, your, let's say, income tax returns, your PAN numbers or SIN numbers over here in Canada, they are 100% secured. So when I've been working on multiple organizations, and even with the government organizations, where they have secure data, and they are perfectly fine with that. And then you have an option to, like, at which place you want the data to be placed out. So some people have a requirement, they want to place data only in US East, or they want to place it in Europe region. So you could just make sure that the Microsoft is putting your data in that particular region. So nothing to worry on that. This question was a reason 5 years before, when people were apprehensive, like cloud is not secured, how the security would be there. But nowadays, people don't even ask this question. They are so much sure about the cloud, right? Any other question, any query, anything? Because if I come back to my, I told you that the questions are going to be there. But answers are not granted, right? Questions are definitely going to be granted, right? So I hope this kind of gives you motivation to start off somewhere. You don't need any kind of I would say, what you call as a rocket science knowledge or a PhD to start with the cloud or do something wonders. It's something very simplistic. You go there, you have certain clicks, set up a resource, try it for yourself, you see it for yourself, and then you just delete the resource. Now, let's say I have used that resource and I don't need that. You could just go over there. Let's say I don't need the SQL Server. So I'll go into the resource group. Okay. I don't need this RKV, this server, and RKV, the lovely database for the SQL server, because those were the two things which we created. This is the Postgres server, which I still need. So I just go and say, okay, I want to delete this. So you select these two, delete it. And you simply say, yes, I want to confirm, and these two resources are going to be deleted. Just delete it. You are only charged for the time period for which you used that. That might be in certain cents for me or something like that, because the total cost, it gave me a prediction that would be $5. So I've not even used it for, let's say, 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes maximum, but then it would be in cents. So then these resources are deleted. Now the server is gone, the virtual machines which it created, they just wind it up, and I'm just left with this one. So it's easy for me, right? Any other question, anything for me? Let me know, guys. I did mention it to you, the certifications. This is the channel which I run. If you want to kind of have a look at that. I do post videos on different things, like recently I posted it on SQL Server 22 features, on Azure services, on certain videos on group by clauses or anything. These are all the videos which I do. So yeah, I have posted some videos on programming also, like React or anything. So you could just have a look at it and see it for yourself how it works. And yeah, any other questions, guys? Anything where I can be helpful?
Students, you can ask any of the question to sir related to today's masterclass, please.
Yes, so there's one more question which I could see that is being asked is, can I migrate to and from Azure? Yes, you could definitely migrate it. And for the migration, let's say, if you search, you don't have to be like very much expert in this, SQL Server Migration Assistant. Just search it. Google would give you all the answers. So there is a SSMA, SQL Server Migration Assistant. It can help you to migrate Access, DB2, MySQL, Oracle, or a SAP to the Azure SQL. So this is a software which gets installed on your machine, let's say on your local machine, and it kind of helps you to migrate your stuff. It would let you know the best practices and everything, right? So these are so much easy. And even you have a DMAs, like Data Migration Assistant. So DMA is another one. Like if you have a SQL server and you just want to migrate your data, you could do that. So this is a Data Migration Assistant. It gets installed on your machine and it would let you know when you could configure that, and just click a button and automatically your data is pushed onto the Azure. Right? So these are all the tools and techniques which are available. We use these tools on a daily basis, but fundamentally you can also learn it out, how exactly they work. But yes, you could easily migrate from your on-premise to the cloud, or from the cloud. Nobody would like to go right now back to the on-premise, right? People are going from the premises to the cloud, not the other way around. Any other question, any queries or anything?
Any other question? Yes.
So if you have any queries, you can just raise your hands. I'll unmute you one by one.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have queries. Yeah, Sajan, you can talk now.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Rohit. Rohit, I just need to confirm that as you were saying that there is on a one click that we have to migrate our data from SQL to Azure. So right. I need to confirm that whether if you can show us the one kind of demo in this, it would really help to understand the things. If you could just for one table.
For this one, you need a little bit more lengthier session. The reason for that is when you do a data migration, let's say even for one table, you need to set up the data migration assistant on your local server. And then you need to create an Azure project called as a Azure Data Migration Service. So if I go over here and I'll show you, so data migration service. So this is the service which you need to set it up as a full-fledged project out of here. and then it creates a connection between your data migration assistant on your what you call your local machine. Let's say I have a local machine, so you are running, let's say, one table or whatever. Then it firstly does like a kind of an inspection on that. So in fact, I wanted to do it, but because of the paucity of time, it's not feasible. It in fact requires another session purely on this, even for one table. Then it would require a complete more session on that. And I won't mind. I can talk to Manish, and Manish, if feasible in the near future, we could do that kind of a session, especially for these students if they are really interested to go that way.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. And ma'am, kindly note down this so that in coming days we can arrange one session of sir.
Yes, and Manish, I would love to do this session because it would be another hands-on where people could see, okay, they have a table in their local server and now they want to migrate it to SQL Server on Azure. Okay, it's so easy. Install one thing, but it requires a little bit of a timing. And in this time framework, we couldn't do that because it's a paucity of time. So that's why. But we could definitely do it.
Definitely, sir. We'll arrange this shortly, sir.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Thank you.
No worries. You're most welcome.
And there is one more small question from my side. That if suppose that there is 1 million of reports which are there in our Azure background, Azure system. And we are, if I'm talking about my side, I've been working as a data scientist, and we've been working with Informatica.
Right.
So, the SQL Server and Azure or PG Admin and Greenplum databases. So all these databases are integrated with Informatica. So sometime what exactly happened is that the job got failed due to server unavailability or data got failed, or there is a node issue happened in the system. So,
right.
So in that case, what should be the right way to, it means how we can set up the kind of thing that if there is any node failure happened, that it should automatically move on some other.
So okay, I'll try to answer that question.
Just need to restrict the deadlock error. This is what I want.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So there is normally a principle called as, what's your good name, my dear? I forgot your name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Rohit Sajan. My name is Sajan.
Sajan. Okay. Yeah, Sajan. So let me kind of explain it to you. Now, there is a best practice, and I think so you have very well concerned about this, and we have faced that issue. So now what happens is, technically, if you are doing, let's say, this kind of a stuff, normally the best practice would be to go in for this kind of a situation. So what you do is, so let's say if you have let's say a Postgres database, right? PG database. Now, when you set up a PG database, so what you do is you also set up a read replica. Now, when you do a read replicas, there are two advantages to that. Now, what is happening is all the people who are actively working with the applications, they are connecting to your main database, right? So this is all going to the main database. But let's say there are people who are working on, let's say, dashboards or anything, right? So people who just want, they say, oh, I'm just working on a report. I need a dashboard. I need only read-only database, right? So they could just go on to this particular one. So first purpose it solves is it helps you to offload your load. So people are not connecting onto this. You would avoid your deadlocks or anything because these people are only interested in reading the data, not writing it, right? Over here, we are reading it, writing it, transactions are being done, everything is done. In this case, we are just making sure that the application is reading it. Now, the second advantage in a read replica is if this gets failure, this is automatically taken offline and this would become your primary server. That's the beauty of it. It is seamless. Nobody has to intervene. It is automatically done, right? So that's the beauty of a read replica. So you set up a read replica. You can set up read replicas like depending upon which database you use from 1 to 5 read replicas in Azure at least. And in AWS and different, they have like 12 read replicas for Amazon's Aurora database, right? Which is their own version of a database. So that would be the best practice to set it up in a cloud.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you
Does
so much,
that
Rohit.
answer your question, Sajjan?
Yes, almost. I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Rohit.
Yeah, no worries.
Any other student?
Any other question? I hope, guys, this makes sense to you, right? Somebody might be knowing it, somebody might have done it, somebody has some base experience, somebody has some intermediate experience, but this definitely kind of helps you to move in that line of direction, because you cannot do so much of things in a very small session, like 2.5 hours. But I've tried, like, my major session was on practical demos, not on the PPT. I just created it for, okay, what I am, who I am, what we are going to talk about. That's all. I don't want to bore you out because nobody's interested in PPTs, right? So that's why. But yes, doing these kind of sessions, like practical hands-on, is where you actually feel, okay, you have learned something, you could probably gain something, and you're a better person. You have done something. Okay, I've seen something. I'm confident I can also do that. That's the like the kind of motivation which I want to instill in all of you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you so much, Rohit
just
sir.
one more, one more
sorry.
question there is there. What is the difference between cloud computing and mobile computing? Cloud computing, I think so, Rajat, we have talked about, where PaaS, IaaS or SaaS services, they go around. Mobile computing is more likely you develop computing or you develop applications for mobile. There is no as such feature, I would say, that actually deals with the mobile computing. Mobile is more likely multiple form factors. You have an iPad, you have a tablets, you have laptops, you have PCs, you have bigger screens, smaller screens, but your application runs irrespective of different ways. So that's the basic difference. But cloud computing is a broader concept, huge concept, which is abstraction and giving business houses a much more better way of controlling the things. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Yeah, that's all from my side. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. It was really a great session, great practical oriented session. Sir, I just want to share that I'm happy to share that now from this session, we have in online, we have a great number of students with us. And as you are seeing that we have international students with us also, sir. So at present, sir, we have students in online mode from approximate 20 countries in the world, sir. So
that's nice.
And by the time, sir, we are getting good response, and that is why. And even, sir, today is the maximum presence in a master in a master class, sir. So till date, I think at one stage it was more than 200. So we haven't seen this kind of audience and this kind of presence in any masterclass till now, apart from this, sir. So
Manish, I just want to say one thing to all these students, that I have been a teacher, I have been a mentor, I'm still a mentor. I love teaching. If you see my profile on Instagram or anywhere, I have mentioned it, though I'm a data architect, but I'm a teacher by heart. Right. And I'm blessed that students love me. They still kind of follow me around. They approach me with queries and questions, and I'm the most happiest person to answer those queries, because at one point of time, I do have the same queries when I started off in early 90s. But at that time, there was no internet, no YouTube or anything. But nowadays, it's so easy. So I'm blessed to have all of you, and especially you, Manish. You gave me a chance to on this platform to share my knowledge and give it back to the community. So I'm really thankful to you and Ginny ma'am and all the LPU online, and especially to the Chancellor Saab and everyone in the LPU community. That's always a home run for me, right?
Thank you, sir. I just got a message from the respected Ginny ma'am that because as I already mentioned that due to certain medical reasons she won't be able to join, but she messaged me that she really missed your session, because she always very much excited for your classes, and she always admire a kind of way you teach always to the students, sir. So
thank you. Please convey my regards to Ginny ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. So at the end, I would request Dr. Kulvinder Pal, sir, to formally give a vote of thanks for the sir. Over to Kulvinder Pal, sir, please.
Thank you, Manish, sir, for giving me this opportunity to formally extend vote of thanks for today's masterclass on behalf of Center for Distance and Online Education. We are grateful to our very honorable resource person of today's masterclass, Mr. Rohit Dhand, sir, who has always been very kind to oblige us with his gracious presence for the conduct of such masterclasses. Sir, we know that you are very busy in your work-related and other endeavors, and also there are timing-related constraints, you being in Canada, but you still took time out of your busy schedule to bless our online mode students with your expertise in the field of cloud databases. I'm confident that our students have plenty to take away from today's masterclass, in addition to getting inspired from your dynamism and charisma. Thank you once again, sir. I also
thank you, Kulvinder. Really, thanks for the kind words. But as I mentioned, it's always a homecoming for me. LPU is always dear to me, as always.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and I also extend my heartfelt thanks to our online mode students who have attended today's masterclass and got benefited from the knowledge and understanding imparted during the class. It is always your enthusiasm, inputs, and feedback which drive us to conduct such classes and activities for your professional and academic enrichment. We would be happy to hear from you if you have any specific topics in your mind which you want us to organize masterclass or guest lecture on. Once again, a thank you for your active participation in the class. I'm also very grateful to our academic team led by Professor Ajay Bamba sir and the staff members involved in the conduct of this class, and ma'am, Mr. Rohit. Thank you for your support. And sincere thanks to our technical support team of YTV from Division of Student Welfare who have streamed this masterclass live on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Last but not the least, we express our sense of gratitude to the visionaries behind the scene, leadership of Center for Distance and Online Education, Gineni Javan ma'am and Manish sir, who have been instrumental in conceptualizing and devising activities at par with conventional mode students for our online and distance learners. Thank you, sir and ma'am, for your guidance and support.
Thank you.
Thank you, one and all, and have a good day or good evening or good night ahead as per your location. Best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you, Kulvinder sir. And dear students, in coming Saturday on 24th, we are coming up with another interesting masterclass by Dr. Rajiv Sopti ji. I would like to here mention that Rohit sir and Rajiv sir has worked very closely for long years. So next class on 24th, we are coming up with Rajiv sir. And yes, as per your demand and as per your feedback, I'll discuss with Rohit sir, and shortly we will again come with another interesting masterclass with Rohit sir, a practical oriented class by sir. So thank you, sir. Thanks all for this.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you.
Sir.
Really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Sir.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this masterclass.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Recording stop.